everyone, welcome back to Fact Beast with ANZACs, another Fact Beast with ANZACs video, and today we're talking about why Anzac Day matters to everyone, especially the youth. Now, you might be thinking, wait, isn't Anzac Day the day where people wake up really early, like 4 o'clock early? They get out of bed and basically they stand quietly and also eat yummy biscuits. Well, yes, that's definitely the day we're talking about, Anzac Day. And who better to talk to about Anzac Day than the NZ Air Force Liaison officer, ex-NZ cadet officer, past president of Dunedin RSA, the Returned Service Association, Kevin Weir. Welcome to the show.
Thank you, ANZACs, and it's an absolute pleasure to be here.
No, definitely a huge thank you to you. I talked to Jerry Costello, and unfortunately he couldn't make it, but a huge thank you to Jerry Costello for trying to be on Fact Beast with ANZACs. Unfortunately, he couldn't get here, but we have Kevin Weir, so he's the man for today.
I'll be the ring-in.
Yep, he's the ring-in, and we're going to have an exciting show. It's going to be fun, it's going to be educational. So starting off with a question that I normally ask everyone. Could you please describe yourself in 3 words or emojis?
3 words or an emoji? Well, I don't use emojis for starters, so that makes it 3 words.
Oh.
3 words. No, I can't. I'm loyal to my standing, to what I do.
Yeah.
So
Loyal.
I have loyalty there. I'm honest.
Honest.
And I like to help everybody, so whatever word that comes in to offer help to everybody.
Yeah, perfectly fitting to your job and your role, and definitely we had a wee chat before, and honest, loyal and helpful definitely all fit in the chat we had, which is very nice. Now, getting away from the icebreaker section, we've broken the ice, and now let's get on to today's big question, which is how or why is ANZAC meant to be for everyone, especially the youth? Because you've worked with youth, and on your thought, why is it very important to youth?
I think what you've got to realise, ANZACs, is for youth, many young people actually served.
Yes.
For starters, the First World War, my own grandfather lied about his age to go overseas. It was an adventure. Wow. He was 19 when he went overseas. You had to be between 20 and 46 in the initial intakes. And he lied to be 19 to go overseas. So for many people in 1914 and thereabouts, and the youth, it was an adventure. All their mates would go away and they'd go overseas thinking it was just another big event. They'd get a free trip and all the rest of it. Youth need to understand it for a very simple reason. One is youth were involved, and 2, the most important thing is somebody must carry it forward. Yes. Somebody must carry the memories of all these young people that have been lost. You know, in excess of 30,000 New Zealanders have died in military conflicts since the First World War. So, wow. So it's got to be carried. You are the generation that is going to bring it forward for us and remember those that have given their lives.
Yes, definitely. And if we think about it, 19-year-olds these days are probably watching Facebook, TikTok, YouTube on their phone, gaming, and and obviously the teenagers back then would lie about their age, thinking it would be a simple trip, but no, it definitely wasn't, and that's why Anzac Day is here. We need to remember all of those who have served for us.
Absolutely, and we've served right up into modern time, and there's people that are serving now. Fortunately, New Zealand is very passive, and we have a lot of United Nations contact, and we're working in those sorts of arenas. So I'd like to think that we're going to remain in that sort of capacity.
Yeah, and hopefully we are, or the future generations will be more, how do you say this, more braver, like the past generations, to go out there, defend their country, protect all of us. So yeah, we've talked about basically a little bit about the youth. There will be more about that coming on.
Yeah.
But getting into just ANZAC Day, what does ANZAC Day or just ANZAC mean to you?
Well, ANZAC is a pretty special day. You know, there are worse days in New Zealand history, and we have other days of remembrance, but ANZAC was the first one that was where Australia and New Zealand went into a campaign, the very first campaign in the First World War, where Australia and New Zealand joined to go onto the Gallipoli Peninsula. And they fought there for a failed campaign for until April to December of that year. I was in Gallipoli 2 years ago, and it was just after bushfires. And it had burnt off all the scrub, all the rosemary and all the pines, and you could actually see the terrain that these people were fighting in.
Oh.
And if you could imagine running through the tailings like at Bannockburn gold diggings and trying to get up the gravelly cliffs and that's exactly what I saw.
Yeah, so
ANZAC, just sorry to...
No, it's okay.
ANZAC is pretty special to me, not only for that campaign, but for all the others that we've lost soldiers in and that have fought.
Yeah, it was supposed to be a nice sunny beach vacation, but steep hills inside bunkers, tunnels, they all ruined it. Yeah, and we're talking, like before we were talking about like tunnels and like how people would make tunnels either to communicate or to fight each other. Which sounds really exciting right now, but like, in your perspective, do you think it was really exciting back then?
I think there were a lot of very, very scared young men, and I think they
definitely
were very scared. And they came to the realisation that this wasn't a holiday anymore. It wasn't, you know, they had to entrench and live in foul conditions, you know, because not only did people die from combat, they died from disease and all the other problems that manifest from living in those sorts of quarters. I really believe they had a bad run, but that wasn't the worst. Of course, I've spoken to you about when we left there and we went to the Western Front, and the atrocities were even worse, and the loss of life even greater in that campaign. So it's our young men learnt a very hard lesson the hard way.
And a fun fact I just wanted to say, so the entire battle lasted about 8 months.
Correct.
That's like, if you imagine that now, people go, I don't want to go to school, but that's even longer than the entire school year if you think about it. So, so the ANZAC soldiers landed in Turkey, in Gallipoli, in Turkey, and a wee bit of a recap. They thought it would be fun, it really wasn't, and people, did they get bored back then? Because like right now, any kid, if you ask any kid what makes you bored, they'll go, if I have no Wi-Fi. But like, it was probably more boring than exciting back in when the ANZACs fought.
I can't answer that, Ajax, but I can certainly tell you I know how I'd feel in that environment, and I would certainly be quite pleased to have Wi-Fi there, to be able to get away from things. It was a very failed campaign, and part of it, historically, we desired. We didn't want Turkey involved with Germany. They were becoming allies, and if we took over the Straits, we were going to get into what was then Constantinople, which is now old Constantinople became what's the city? I was in there 2 years ago. I've lost it myself. It must be the nervousness. But anyway, it's we were trying to control that, but Germany took on a very young political group of Turks, and they became part of the war. They weren't originally wanting to be in the war, but the Gallipoli sort of reinforced it all. So.
Yeah, I'll try to think of it. I know I've definitely learned about it before as well, but it just popped out of my mind. So we'll need to talk about that a little bit later.
We'll Google it.
Yeah, Google. We have internet. We're forgetting that. So now we've talked about a little bit about what happened at Gallipoli, what Gallipoli is, where it is. Now let's talk about who the ANZACs were. Now for anyone who's not watching and who doesn't know what ANZAC means, so ANZAC stands for the Australian and New Zealand Army Corps. Could you please tell us a little bit more about that?
Well, this is when we all went to Egypt. We actually started off in Egypt. Our soldiers sailed to Egypt as a start of the training base, and on the way there, New Zealand took the first captives of the First World War. They took over German Samoa, which was a radio base. So on the way to the Middle East, we stopped at Samoa and took prisoner the Germans that ran the radio base out of Samoa. So further on, we went to Egypt and there were companies of New Zealanders in Australia, and they, to give us the extra strength that was required, sailed to Gallipoli.
How lovely. And
that is where they became a joined group and went forth to work there.
Yeah, that's awesome to know. Knowing that I did not know that, and that's something I will definitely remember now. We got that little push and we started sailing off, and then it would be awesome if we could commemorate more of us, but tongue twister. Commemorating this is awesome. So what do you think should happen from your perspective? A question deeply related to you, your personal thoughts. What do you think should happen on ANZAC Day? So is there anything we would add on to do on ANZAC Day, or?
No, I think we show that respect. I'm not necessarily sure it should be Mondayised as a holiday.
Yep.
But I think that we do what we can to respect. However, there are other campaigns which I believe should be also recognised. And I told you earlier of Bellevue Spur in Passchendaele, where one morning, New Zealand lost 840 young men in a couple of hours. Over the 4 days of that campaign, we lost something like 1,200 young men.
Yeah, that's not good.
No, it's not, and I think there are things that can be commemorated as well,
Yeah.
But I don't believe we should change ANZAC Day. I don't believe we should change the spirit of it. I think it's a very special day. It doesn't matter that it's Australia and New Zealand. It doesn't matter. It's not the major battle or anything else. It is a day. And I think it's a very special day. The other day, of course, which is equally important, is that Remembrance Day, the armistice, when a treaty was signed, and hopefully it was going to be the war that ended all wars, but we know that hasn't been the case.
Yeah, definitely changing the ANZAC spirit is not something you'd like to do. We should totally be on board with Australia as well, because after all, we might have had a little bit of roughness, but together we united as one group called the ANZACs. We hosted our own ANZAC spirit, and we travelled together all the way to Gallipoli in Turkey to fight alongside each other. So just remembering that explains a lot about ANZAC Day and how awesome the day is.
It is a pretty special day as far as I'm concerned. And every year I hear the last post in Reveille, and you feel it. It's emotive. You feel it in your heart, and because I'm reflecting on those people that didn't come back. Many that did come back also succumbed to their wounds, to gas problems, and this is the First World War, and psychological problems, and then they had the Spanish flu, which was that took millions of people around the world. So people returned to New Zealand, and young soldiers that had managed to get through the war died because of this other flu, which didn't come from Spain, of course, but it's got the namesake. So.
And before we move on, a question that just popped up to my mind is there like any like more people we should celebrate? Obviously there were the nurses who definitely played a big role in ANZAC during the war, the First World War. And do you think that we should, in your perspective, do you think that we should honour more of the nurses alongside the men who fought?
It's important you probably know that on Anzac Day, the RSA put down a wreath for the cenotaph, but at the Andy Bay Cemetery, a posy is presented for all the females that served in the war as a token of memorial for them. So yes. They are, anybody that served is remembered. And even animals that are lost are remembered. My grandfather was in the Second World War, he was a baker, but he was also a driver. So in the First World War, he was a driver, and he used to ride horses between the fronts and deliver messages. So when his horse was shot out under him, they would eat the meat because it was fresh protein for the soldiers. So the horses were actually...
the horses were combined as well. And all the animals, you brought up a good point. We need to care for the animals and look after the animals as well. Now there's a book, and I also do storytelling on Fact Beast with ANZACs, and I'm thinking to read aloud this book. It's called The ANZAC Ted. Have you read it?
I haven't read it, but...
Oh, really? That's a huge surprise, because... Near Anzac Day, that book comes, like, it real lives itself. It's about this Anzac teddy who is carried alongside the Anzacs. And what happens, if I can remember correctly, is that Ted travels alongside all of the soldiers, and when the soldiers were like hurt, wounded, the Anzac Ted it just actually comes alive, and it goes to tell the nurses comes and it treats the soldiers who are wounded. So it's a really lovely book, and so that's just something I wanted to add on.
I may have heard of it, but I haven't read it. It's probably at a different reading level of mine.
yeah, definitely. A picture book's not your thing?
No, well, that's getting easier.
Yeah. And you mentioned about posies before. So posies are a small hand-tied bunch of flowers which include like blooms, foliage, and fragrant herbs like the rosemary.
That's right. They are presented. Every service person's grave in cemeteries around Dunedin get a posy on Anzac Day. Usually it's represented by a red piece of paper with a bit of lavender, bit of rosemary inside it. And the red is to represent the red of the poppy and of course the rosemary. The significance of the two plants, the rosemary grows wild in Turkey, and the soldiers would take a sprig of it and carry it as a remembrance thing for people that they'd lost. So rosemary is a remembrance herb, and that's what it's used for in Anzac Day and different commemorations. The poppy, of course, comes from another front. It comes from the Western Front, the areas of Belgium and France where the battlefields took place there. And when the mud's churned up and it's, shell fire and all sorts of other things, the first seeds to actually germinate in the spring were the poppies, the Flanders poppy. And that's why we wear the poppy on these particular days and days of commemoration. So,
and a cool thing about Anzac Day is the things that are related to Anzac Day all have like their own meaning. So like posies,
correct.
Poppies, rosemary, everything has its own meaning, and I guess that's what makes Anzac Day so super special.
Very much so. I mean, we can't lose track of the elements that make it special. And they're the things youth will carry with them. You will take this on, and you will continue wearing the rosemary and the poppy, and that is where it's important that you are part of this formula as well.
And a fun fact I just wanted to share was that soldiers made their tea in trenches. And like, just imagine trying to have a sip of tea when there's explosions going all around. That's like next level calmness.
I think they got to a psychological stage
where
they turned off. And they still had to survive. Their primary thing was to survive themselves, and when it's going over their heads, they ignored it and just took it as it came. I can't answer for them. I know if I was there, I would be extremely, extremely scared. I'm sure it wouldn't be a place I'd like to be there.
Not only scared, but also annoyed, like, let's have some calmness, boom, boom, all around. Yeah. So our next topic is, why do we wake up so early on Anzac Day? The start of Anzac Day, there's something called the dawn service, and we wake up very, very early, like the chickens aren't even gone cock-a-doodle-doo early.
No, real early.
Yeah, really early. And so could you tell us a bit about why we wake up so early and the dawn service?
Well, the dawn service is that breaking of the day, the start of the day, and that is where we commemorate at the start of the day, and at the going down of the sun, we will remember them. So, the start to the end, it's remembered in poetry and all sorts of things. Yes. So it's important it would just be another event if we did it in the middle of the day. But focusing on dawn as the element to have everybody come together is pretty special in itself. You could get out of bed for it, couldn't you? You're going to.
I'm definitely going to.
I'm usually up a bit earlier than that, but it's about 4 o'clock when I sort of get together and go down there and take reads and bits. So.
Yeah, definitely. I'll get up at 5:30 if I have about 12 alarms on.
It'll be lovely to see you there.
Yeah, definitely. We'll talk a bit about that event later on, because we all want the youth to come there so they can learn about the event, and they can share it on to later generations, future generations.
Well, that interestingly, I was at a service today of King's High School.
Oh, yeah.
And King's High School had 14 young people that have been lost in service there. And they do a very, very good service today. There is going to be a large group from King's High School that are actually going to attend the service. So schools are coming on board, and they're embracing is probably the wrong choice of word, but they're taking on board the whole commemoration of Anzac Day, and that's really important. That's where, once again, you and targeting youth are actually continuing those memories.
And that's the whole point of Fact-Based with ANZACs. We like, since I'm someone from a diverse culture, diverse background, I like to keep all this information, take it, bring people on Fact-Based with ANZACs, and just talk about it, have yarn about it, so we can, number one, I can learn about it, and number two, I can teach others, and they'll educate and grow alongside me.
Absolutely.
So, yeah.
Well done.
And another joke this time about the dawn service. Previously, what I said was like, I need 12 alarms to wake me up. And yeah, well, I probably do, but do you yawn like during the dawn service?
No, I don't think so. Usually when you're standing at attention or something else, you're focused in other areas. The important thing, when I was in New Zealand Cadet Forces, which is an incredible organisation for youth, started here in Dunedin in 1864, so a great youth organisation, we would get all the cadets, I would ensure that they had plenty to drink, sugary drinks, plenty to drink before service, eat a good breakfast before you go on parade, because if you don't, all of a sudden you can end up with a few people falling over, and it happens every year when you're on parade and you're there for 3/4 of an hour at attention and at ease and staying pretty still. Your body can let go, and so do you. You fall over. So
whoever doesn't yawn during the dawn service, they definitely have a superpower like you. And we've all got to try to not do that. Yeah, we've all got to try not to yawn and get distracted, but definitely paying attention to what's really going on, or there's no point on going there. So paying attention.
People yawn. They can't help it sometimes.
Yeah.
And at least you're there. You're there being part of it, and that's the important part.
Yeah. And now a fun segment I want to talk about is the ANZAC biscuits.
Ah.
Yeah, the ANZAC biscuits. So do you know about the ANZAC biscuits?
My wife bakes them.
Oh, lovely. I know
Ah.
plenty about them. So could you?
That's part of the problem.
Yeah, the problem.
The biscuits themselves were part of a Red Cross package that Australia and New Zealand people would send over to the soldiers in battlefields. They're not sure whether it was Australia or New Zealand that actually came up with the recipe, but they used one of the things that here in Dunedin is one of the only places producing rolled oats in New Zealand. Harrowways produced rolled oats, and they used rolled oats and sugar and coconut and flour and that to make the biscuits. We can't be sure, it's like the pavlova, we can't be sure who made the first ANZAC biscuit, but that was the one. When the Scottish settlers arrived, they actually incorporated the rolled oats into a slightly different recipe, and that's how the ANZAC biscuits came about. But who's going to say I invented them first? We don't know.
So yeah, definitely. I mean, I haven't done baking of ANZAC biscuits. I actually had no clue there were rolled oats in them. So hey, we learn something every day. I've learned a lot today. So yeah, the ANZAC biscuits are basically history that we can eat.
That's right.
Yeah, like we can remember that the soldiers, their one dessert, their one cheesecake, chocolate cake was the ANZAC biscuits, the sweet sugary rolled oats. So yeah.
Whether they were fresh when they got there, I can't be sure.
Yeah. But according to some sites, they last a pretty long time.
Yes. Yeah,
Yes.
I think they last reasonably well, but I think any sort of gift that came from home, when you're in, as you said earlier, Ajax, you have the noise going over the top of you and gunfire and also any gift that came from home would be a special gift to those people.
Yeah, and there was definitely a lot of not only gifts but notes travelling across. Yes.
Absolutely.
And I do wonder, was there a mailman there to deliver it? Hopefully not. It would have been a rough job.
Well, my grandfather, as I said, was a dispatch rider, so he may have delivered the mail as well. The mail had to get through.
Yeah, it had to get through somehow.
I just don't imagine it would have been an overnight fast service somehow, because it would have travelled by ship.
Yeah.
In those days, we weren't flying planes between countries. So it would have been by ship, and it would have taken a considerable time. In fact, the news would have been old news by the time they got it. So
now let's move on to. This is a segment where we actually explore that ANZAC Day isn't just about that one battle. It's also it's us remembering the people who had served in not only the ANZAC War, of course, the ANZAC War, and other wars, other peace missions. So it's really about saying, hey, we remember what you did, and it matters, we won't forget.
I think you're absolutely correct. And people today young soldiers are signing a document, they're signing their lives away. They're effectively, the government are putting them in harm's way. They can effectively go out on the front, and that's the part we should remember. All our young soldiers are potentially can be put in harm's way again if necessary. I'm very fortunate that I've met and had some young people in my cadet forces tenure that have gone into military conflict. They've worked on the demilitarized zone in Korea. As United Nations peacekeepers, and I've had others that have gone into peacekeeping roles in Afghanistan, as well as working in the Sinai. I know if young people go there to help them train and all the rest of it. So we're still there. We've still got people from Vietnam campaign that are alive here in the city. But we've been in a lot of places, and I'd like to think, as I said earlier, we take on a more passive role.
That was perfect time. That was perfectly timed, because now that alarm was actually for the most fun part of Fact Based with ANZACs. It's a mix of facts and kind of your perspective across different things. By any chance, do you know, like, just 4 to 5 facts that you're like busting to share about the Anzac War, and I can add on to that later?
4 facts. Well, let's not call it the Anzac War, because it was the First World War.
Yes.
Anzac was just a part of this, the original thing.
First
First World War. Can I pull a fact up?
Oh yeah, definitely.
I have a fact here that that might interest you, and I've told you that we had some pretty horrific losses.
Yes.
I want you to look at these places. Have you been to Milton?
Yes, I have.
Right. Have you been to Green Island?
Yep.
Of course you have. Have you been to Mosgiel?
Yes.
You've all been to Mosgiel, haven't we?
Yeah.
Brighton, Ocean View?
Yep.
That's where I live.
Brighton Beach?
Yeah. Nice place.
Yeah,
a lot of people
definitely.
there, you know. Waikaiti?
Yep, been there.
Been there. Well, you add all the people that live in those towns, plus an extra 100, that's how many people died in the First World War.
Wow, really? And if you think about that, that's like 5 to 6 cities and suburbs.
Well, suburbs anyway, but that's the First World War.
Wow.
Nobody would live, and this is part of a little presentation that I'm going to give to Waikaiti when I'm there. But those are the towns. If you considered both world wars, and I have to read it because I can't remember it.
Yeah, no, it's good.
Both world wars: Milton, Green Island, Mosgiel, Clyde, Waikaiti, Alexandra, Balclutha, Ocean View, Brighton, plus 200 extra people, are the total losses. Every man, woman and child in those towns.
That's like basically the entire the south of South Island.
No, not quite.
Well,
But
not quite, but like...
that's exaggerating.
Yeah.
So there's quite a few facts just in that part alone, isn't there? There are some facts. There are things that I know that I can't recall off the top of my head.
Oh
sometimes.
no, that's definitely okay.
But I think that it's the realisation of the numbers of people, the absolute magnitude, and per head of population, New Zealand was one of the highest in the First World War for losses. 120,000 people trained, with over 100,000, 110 served as part of the First World War. We had a population of just over 1 million. That's 10% of our population.
Wow.
How's that for another staggering one?
Yeah, and I guess that's like almost all the junior boys, or basically seniorish boys, the age of like 20 to 26, as you said before.
There's another one. I've read a book, and it was written by an English author. I can't even remember the name. It's a number of years ago. It was lent to me. I had to give it back. That's probably why I can't remember it. That book, it spoke of the child soldiers of the First World War. Mothers would phone up or contact the army and say, "You've got my child. He's a 14-year-old sniper." On the front line, 14-year-olds fighting because it was an adventure and they escaped the adventure. However, to understand what areas of Britain were like at the time, they were in poverty, and this gave an opportunity to people to escape and perhaps get 3 feeds a day The realism of it wasn't quite like that either. But so there's some pretty terrible facts in itself.
Yeah, that's epic, but like in the sense of like not good. So yeah.
There's youth shouldn't be involved in anything. There is a United Nations treaty, UNCROC, which is the United Nations Convention of the Rights of Children, or something thereabouts, and some countries don't even, they ignore it. But children and youth should be protected. You need there should be no need for you to be brought into conflicts. And once again, your focus is on youth, and I think it's important that they're seen to be protected as well.
Yeah.
We live in a modern society where we don't need children, and it happens. It's still happening around the world.
Yeah, so but definitely we need to not we need to remember that and not ignore that, because
absolutely
we need to protect children.
Remember those that we've lost.
So moving on to a good side of today, there is the ANZAC Day happening on Saturday. Correct. In a few days' time. Could you please tell us about what's happening, who can come, what there is to offer, so all of the youth can join that event and learn more and share it to the future generations?
The dawn service is open to everyone. It's open to anyone and everyone, regardless of your views of military or anything else. You can come and enjoy the service, the commemoration of those lost. The dawn service usually starts off with a rally of the spirits, and at 0600, or might have been, or thereabouts, two rounds are fired from whatever available artillery pieces we have, and that is a rally of the spirits to start the service off. And it goes through various parts of the service, guest speakers and all the rest of it. The important parts are two things to me, are the last post and reveille. The bugle doesn't play, it sounds. The bugle sounds.
The bugle sounds, not plays.
That's right. And they'll play the last post and reveille. And the other thing, of course, is the ode. They shall grow not old as we that are left grow old. Age shall not weary them, nor the years condemn. At the going down of the sun, and in the morning, we will remember them. We will remember them.
Yeah. Very
important words from a very important poem. And that is all part of the service, as well as guest speakers that speak on behalf of those that can't speak, and that are, because that's a pretty hallowed piece of ground, a cenotaph. It's a pretty special place.
So we thank you, and we explored about a lot about ANZAC Day today. We explored about what ANZAC Day is, who fought, it wasn't even a win, and your thoughts on ANZAC Day, and obviously the fun segment of the 4 to 5 facts. That's called the fact-based facts section. And to finish off, is there anything you'd like to tell my listeners?
Well, I'd just like to say, please come along to the dawn service at the Dunedin Cenotaph on Saturday, and it starts at 0600. If you get there a wee bit beforehand, you can get close to the cenotaph, and even though the sound system's on a big screen, it gets you there to be able to see some of the activities that go on. There is one other important part at the dawn service, and it's called the catafalque guard. And the catafalque guard is usually a guard of 4 soldiers or ratings. It could be Navy, Army, Air Force, and they come up and stand at the 4 corners of the cenotaph itself. And that is a catafalque guard usually guards a coffin or a piece like that, and they have to stand there for the whole service.
Wow.
There's only a couple of times they get to move, and just to see those people there do that is quite special as well.
So they're basically frozen there.
They're frozen.
Yeah.
And some mornings we've had a Maori warrior as part of it, and is dressed in limited clothes. I think they actually have dressed him a bit better nowadays so that he stays warmer, but It's very, very solemn, very special. I'd love to see people come. I'd love to see people attend.
Yeah, definitely. Even the tamaraki and rangatahi, the youth who are listening right now, please come to ANZAC Day and the event, the dawn service. It will be awesome. And once again, a huge thanks, Kevin Weir, for coming on to Fact Beast with ANZACs. It's been a lovely episode. I hope we could talk longer next time. But that's all for today, and a huge thank you.
Thank you very much, AJ. Absolute pleasure. Thank you.